We're going this way.
All right. Beginning our mushroom foray on a tarmac road. Ahead of us, fields. Are we going to find mushrooms in fields, Brent? Or
We have a good chance to find wax caps. They thrive in Derbyshire fields, grazed fields.
In fact, some of the mushrooms that grow in symbiosis with trees you also find in fields, but there has to be a tree nearby. So this field is great because there's a woodland that's at the side of it. So you find field mushrooms and woodland mushrooms.
welcome to the food programme with me, Sheila Dillon, and welcome also to the dramatic wildness of Derbyshire's Peak District. So tell us where we are. You're the Derbyshire girl, Deb.
We've just come out of Bonebridge car park in Hayfield, and we are on the lower slopes of Kinder Scout, which is the start of the Pennine Way, actually. This is the route that we take our public forays on. And we had 2 kids with us on Sunday, and they've got eagle eyes, they spot everything, and it's just amazing how keen they are to come along and have fun looking for mushrooms. But we found quite a lot of the seps. The seps are the family that we're going to be looking for today, with the sponge underneath. So penny bun, which is the British name for it, which we call porcini when we sell it, because most people know what porcini is. But it's the same thing, so it's nice to use the British name when we're out foraging and then sell it with the Italian name that everybody knows.
Deb Hampson and Bent Saxmark are the founders of Get Fungi, a company that sells wild mushrooms that they forage in Sweden, Bent's home, but where they both now live for part of the year. They also take groups on what they call mushroom forays here in Derbyshire, teaching people how to safely forage for themselves. Wild mushrooms are not generally something we Brits do, unlike, for example, the Russians, the Finns, the Scandinavians. We don't have a mushroom culture. Though Dorothy Hartley's magnificent recipe book and history, Food in England, published in 1954, has a detailed chapter on what to pick and how to cook many varieties. Since then, perhaps as we've become more urbanised, that enthusiasm and knowledge has faded, though general foraging courses are now very popular. Mushrooms in the wild seem to scare us. If we do eat them, they're usually dried, bought in those little packets and jars from the supermarket, not looking much like they do in the wild, but more on that shortly. So let's actually go back into the wild and my own worries about foraging for fungi.
In Britain, you have to be with someone like with you, Deb, or you, Bent, that knows what they're doing. Is it a dicey thing to do? I mean, my mother always stuck with field mushrooms. That was it. She wasn't going to pick anything else.
It's interesting because where Bengt's from, Sweden, they have a qualification. So he is what's called a mushroom consultant, and it's a university education, but he's qualified to take people out on forays. He knows all the dangerous mushrooms.
I'm not a mycologist.
But you know how to identify the 100 safe, delicious mushrooms.
Yes, and the poisonous ones.
And the poisonous one, yeah.
The Swedish system is really good as well because they divide mushrooms into beginner's mushrooms and then go through the grades to deadly poisonous. So a beginner's mushroom is a mushroom that you can't mix up with any other mushroom. And each mushroom family, for instance, is sort of divided up into characteristics. So, you know, whether it has gills, whether it has sponge underneath or ridges, where it grows, how it smells, and it makes it really easy to identify.
So, after a challenging stile or two over dry stone walls and a long trudge through some thick Derbyshire mud,
Bent has found a little delicacy, a white dome rising out of the grass. Looks like a field mushroom to me, but
I would suggest that too.
oh, look! No, it's not, is it?
Oh, yes.
Is it a field mushroom?
Yeah.
Early
But
on?
Early on.
Wow.
So now it's domed.
That's a beauty, isn't it?
Yes.
Wow.
And if you cut it through, you will see that the gills are pink or
Yes.
in an early stage. Oh, look at
Oh,
that.
that's a beauty. Look at the stem.
It's just solid, firm. It's just wow.
Gorgeous. We'll be able to
Perfect
fry
on
those up for
mushrooms on
lunch.
toast. Yes.
One of the great dishes, isn't it? Mushrooms fried in butter with a bit of cream on toast.
God, mushrooms.
Oh, yeah.
Field mushrooms in the basket, Bent and Deb pushed on for the real prize, porcini, the most highly valued and the most unpredictable.
You can't predict when they turn up because they want extreme weather, believe it or not. They want a long period of drought and then heavy rain in a short period of time, and they pop up like champagne corks. It's just amazing.
What a marvellous idea.
Yes. It happens overnight, and the more extreme the better they grow. But it could be the other way around. It could be a continuous drought, and there would be nothing, of course. Or rain, and they won't turn up just for rain. They need that dry period as well. And on the 23rd of September, I got this hotline with fellow mushroom friends and also intelligence from different forums. There is a boom in Sweden, and I was planning to come 8th of October, but I went the day after, straight on a plane, and picked over 100 kilos in 5 days' time. So you have to be on it.
Brings us on to that question. So can you pick too many mushrooms? I mean, can you ruin mushroom picking? You know, is it like digging up plants? Is it like digging up bluebells? Or
We don't think it is. In Sweden, people are encouraged to pick mushrooms, and here in the UK, there's a very different focus, and obviously there are more people in the UK and less land, so you do have to be careful. But because you're picking the fruiting body, the evidence that we see is that the places that we pick from that grow back year after year, it doesn't stop them from coming back. It's like picking apples off a tree. If you have a tree of apples, you tend to pick all of them that you can, don't you? And I think, you know, it is the same thing. It's the fruiting body, and it comes up and it goes back into the earth. We will never pick all of them anyway.
Oh, this is brilliant. This is a tasty little mushroom, the miller. And how you identify it, it smells of wet flour.
oh, it does. Wet flour. Exactly. Smell that, Nina.
Yeah.
Wet.
That's amazing.
And to be absolutely sure, you can do a test. So you cut the stem off, put it on a dark piece of paper, and it should be a pink spore print.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Okay, so that goes into the edible basket.
Absolutely. Good spot, yeah. Eagle eye, Sheila.
Oh, this is an absolute beauty. Isn't that fantastic? With this gorgeous little stubby base, and the beautiful brown cap, which does look like a penny bun, a bread bun. It does, doesn't it? That got
reason it's called a penny bun.
absolutely. And the other way to distinguish them is you can see this little fine white line that goes around the base of the hat. That's another way of distinguishing that it is actually a penny bun. So there's the sort of the fact that it's got sponge underneath, the white line around the hat, and then a mesh pattern on the actual foot. Fantastic. We're going to have a great lunch.
Back in their home kitchen in the nearby town of New Mills, we showed Deb and Bent some samples of the dried wild mushrooms we'd bought, not foraged.
This is a well-known brand of sort of deli things. And there's a lot of brown woody bits in there. So how would you...
Smell it. First of all, smell
I was first smell.
That smells like Marmite to me.
It smells Marmite to me. Yeah.
It's not how dried mushrooms should smell. Some of them that we found previously have been mushrooms with gills, so they're definitely not even porcini. They're all mixed up together.
So this jar that we've just opened is meant to be dried porcini.
Yes.
And you're saying this is not what dried porcini smells like?
This is what old dried porcini smells like.
Should smell like.
Oh my goodness. Oh, you're right. This is mushroom and that's Marmite.
The interesting thing is that most people know what some bad foods look like. Bad meat, bad fish, bad cheese, if it's mouldy, whatever. 99.9% of people, British people, do not know can't tell when they buy these mushrooms that they are really not fit to use.
Are these things being sold in the UK because we don't know anything about mushrooms? Could you sell these in Sweden? Could you sell them in Hungary? Could you sell them in Italy?
No,
Unlikely.
Unlikely. They know their mushrooms. Czech Republic, Hungary, Italy, France, they know how they should look like and how they should smell like. It would be impossible to sell them there. Maybe it's the buyers themselves or someone else in this chain that have not compared to the real stuff, but this is not fit for eating in my point of view.
All right, so we've been looking at a branded dried porcini mushroom, and that was £4.35. Wild mushrooms from a supermarket, that's a supermarket own label. Porcini mushrooms from another brand. So those three, vacuum packed in jars and then this plastic packaging, they were all Marmite and didn't get the nod from Deb and Bent. We have to find out more, don't we?
We do. So, Deb and Bent and others we'll meet in this programme have a pretty low opinion of the general quality of dried mushrooms available in UK shops and supermarkets. Is that justified? Well, to find out, we needed to move on from our small sample on that Derbyshire kitchen table. And the first person we talked to was an academic behind a study that investigated some of the very questions that led us to make this programme.
I am Mauro Rivas Ferreiro. I am a PhD student in mycology in the University of Vigo in Spain, and I have a background on taxonomy of mushrooms that I studied in the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew in London.
A couple of years ago, you co-authored a study looking at wild porcini that was available for sale. Can you tell me about that study? You know, why you did it, what you did, and what your findings were?
So the study was building on something that actually one of my PhD supervisors, Laura Martinez-Sud, had done before. They looked at a single packet of mushrooms that they purchased in a supermarket in the UK. And since the packet was coming from China, they discovered that none of the species inside the packet were European species as advertised in the label. And they actually described 3 new species to science from that packet, from fragments of mushrooms that were available in that packet. That really caught my eye. That was a really interesting study. And yeah, we collected several packages, one from the UK, but then several from Spain and Portugal, and also from all over Europe, and different prices. That is a very important thing. So we had a very luxury brands and also some mushrooms that we collected from supermarkets. We basically took 12 samples from each packet, and we used a DNA approach to identifying them because, as you can imagine, they are very fragmented in the packets. Visually, you cannot really identify them. We ended up seeing that even though most packets said that they contain Boletus edulis, which is the main porcini species, a lot of them didn't even contain a single fragment of porcini, of Boletus edulis.
So all the packets you found had porcini in them, but not as advertised on the label. What most surprised you about this?
The fact that it is very easy to just put Boletus edulis complex in the label, and that would cover everyone. Like, that would cover the consumer, because we would know that the species that are there are what we consider porcini, but they're not specifically Boletus edulis. And it would cover also the person that's commercializing those packets, because they are not lying really. I guess either because they don't really know about porcini identification, or just because they want to make the label as easy as possible for the consumer, they just decide not to put this information in the label.
Why do you think this research that you did is significant?
I think it sheds a light on the many unknowns that exist in mushroom identification. It also highlights the fact that we are treating mushrooms as a monolith. So you are allergic to mushrooms, you are allergic to all mushrooms, and that's possibly not the case. There's people who are allergic to peach and not plum, even though they are very related. So that the same thing could happen with mushrooms. And you should be able to differentiate those in the label. You should be able to read the label and know exactly what you're getting, what you're eating.
Was there any suggestion of the mushrooms that you found being poisonous, being unsafe to eat?
Those are two different things. None of the ones we found are known to be poisonous or toxic. In the mushrooms, we usually say toxic. Some of the packets contain some species other than porcini that could cause upset stomachs in some people.
What about you, and did you pick wild mushrooms when you were a child?
Yes. In fact, that's how I started in mycologist, because my family, they don't really know much about fungi in general, but they do have a tradition of picking mushrooms. And porcini is one of the main ones that we pick because it's very abundant here in northwestern Spain. And we do dry them. And so I kind of know what to look for when I open a packet of dried mushrooms that I purchased. I know when something has been rotting and then dried. I know when something has been colonized by another fungus and then dried. Or what is a really good piece of porcini that has been dried, yeah.
Some of the samples that Nina and I bought, they were dark brown and woody, and smelled more of yeast. When we opened the packet, they didn't smell very mushroomy. What would that tell you?
So that is an observation that we had as well in our article, and it's just an observation. We didn't really make a lot of analysis on it, but it certainly means that the mushroom was not in perfect condition when it was dried. When the mushroom, when it's dry, if it smells of yeast, and particularly if it is darker and woodier and tougher to the touch, that means that the mushroom has started the degradation process before it was dry. The consumer should be aware of that, and then certainly you shouldn't be selling them for the prices that some companies are selling them for.
Well, I mean, this consumer, I think I know a little bit about food, but I know not much about mushrooms, and I have been buying dried mushrooms for years and opening the packet and thinking they smelled like yeast and they're dark brown and woody, and then I would soak them and make a risotto or something, and then I wouldn't like the risotto and I would think it was my fault. And I've only making this program come to understand it might have been the mushrooms, not me.
Yeah, it certainly. I mean, what I was saying applies to porcini mainly. There is mushrooms that should be woody and should be dark when they're dry, because that's the color they have when they're fresh. But yeah, with porcini, I would say that the quality of the product definitely will affect the taste afterwards.
You mentioned 2 previous studies. What was the other one?
They used a much more expensive technology to assess wild mushroom products. So, for example, sauces or tortellini or things that are more processed and the mushrooms are not individually accessible. They are in a mash. And most of the DNA they recover is from white button mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, much more cheaper, commercially available mushrooms. And then they have a small proportion of, for example, porcini. But they advertise it as being all porcini.
So if you dry some mushrooms yourself, put them in a jar, 6 months later open them, you don't expect it to smell like Marmite?
Not at all. Not at all. I have mushrooms here that I have dried a year and a half ago, and they are perfectly fine. If dried properly and stored properly, they should smell like mushroom.
We contacted all the brands and buyers of those wild mushrooms we'd sampled to see if they could tell us where the mushrooms came from and how they check their quality. Most didn't want to talk to us. One brand said in writing that a strong savoury aroma can be entirely normal and is a natural result of drying porcini, and that some people like the stronger umami flavour. None of the samples we bought gave a country of origin, though some labels said where they were packed. But with Mauro's study in mind, we needed to know more, particularly how China comes into it. Our first stop was New Covent Garden Market, the UK's largest wholesale market, where every night the world's fruit, veg and fungi arrive in staggering quantities. Producer Nina Pullman went there to meet Will Thorogood, owner of the Mushroom Man, the only dedicated mushroom supplier in the market.
We've got a real mixture here. These are some right at the beginning of the sep season or porcini season. These are Bosnian.
So these have come straight out of a Bosnian forest?
Straight out of a Bosnian forest and on a lorry to us. Yeah.
Do they still smell like all that kind of nice soily smell?
Yeah.
Like a bit of smell?
Stick your nose in.
Oh, that's amazing, isn't it?
Smell earthy. Just next to us we've got some lovely Scottish chanterelle. Chanterelle and Girol from Scotland are pretty reliable, especially at this time of year. Although it's a bit dry out there at the moment, so we haven't got as much as we usually have.
Beautiful kind of golden egg yolk colour,
exactly.
isn't it?
Yeah,
They're so beautiful.
They're absolutely stunning,
aren't they?
and then when the conditions are absolutely perfect up there, you get a few flushes of porcini up there through the year. If we go to the front, there's a few other things to have a look at. I mean, I'm a 5th generation wholesale greengrocer, so we've been at it some time. We're stood opposite our wholesale company, which is Storrigan & Sons, and all the other products that we deal with are farmed. So in theory, they should be a lot more reliable, and you can plan ahead, and then we're working on a specification. Very difficult to work on specifications and planning ahead with a wild product. So that would be the main difference.
Yeah, I mean, specifications kind of go out the window, right? How do chefs order these things? Is it, I guess, according to weight, and then everything else is just whatever comes?
Yeah, well, because of the volume that we're using, we can be very tight on specifications for people. People want certain sizes and certain things, and we have to manage that for our customers. And it does mean a lot of hand sorting of through kilos and kilos of wild mushrooms to make sure that we're supplying what people are looking for.
Does that happen here then?
Yep.
Is it you going through these wild mushrooms by hand throughout the night?
Yep, the team are sat there with big tables of covered in wild mushrooms, working out what sizes people like and what particular. I know, for instance, when we have the morel season, morels can be 4 inches long or 1 inch long, and people are stuffing them. So if people want a very large one to stuff for a dish, or they want small little delicate ones, and we have to work out which people want what.
Obviously your customers prize quality as well. So when it comes to quality in a wild mushroom, how do you know you've got a good one?
It's colour, shape.
So if we're looking at these,
so we've got...
Remind me what these are again?
So these are some Eastern European Girol, and these are a sort of basic spec. They're quite dirty, they need quite a lot of work to get to a plate ready, and they wouldn't be super regular in size. And then we look at a chanterelle from Scotland, which is much more regular, much brighter colour. It's a thing of beauty, really. It could be a flower.
It could be a flower. They've got beautiful, delicate kind of, what do you call the top part? The gill or the frill? Or
something along those lines, yeah. Yeah.
Harder when it's dried, though.
Yeah, well, dried mushrooms are a different...
Do you do dried as
Yep.
well? Do you?
Yeah.
What have you got
So we can come and have a look at...
Got all the mushrooms. Back into the cold store.
So there's a few here. So morels, just a mixed wild, shiitake. There's more porcini. Some wood here. There's some. We do powdered porcini.
Because you quite often see dried mushrooms in the mainstream supermarkets as well. Maybe that's a good way for people to get into it. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It does look a bit more difficult to sort of know if you're getting a good quality one. Do you know what I mean? Like when we looked at the fresh ones just now, you can really tell that they're fresh. I mean, how do you tell on a dried mushroom whether it's going to taste good?
Yeah, you got to trust what you're buying, but I mean, you can just look at them, and if it's a nice whole clean mushroom, then and that's the best way to have a look.
And I'm really intrigued about the picking in particular, because like I say, for someone who doesn't know about this, just talk me through how that works, because it often is individuals, right, who know about these areas. It's not exactly like any other area of fresh produce. No,
it's complete. I was up in Scotland 2 weeks ago with the pickers up there, and to pick commercially up there, you need to have obviously express permission of the landowner, and these permissions and these spots are traded, commercially between pickers. When one retires, then they'll pass on their favourite patches to others. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how it all works. Yeah. I think they keep that under wraps as well, but
like a fishing rights, maybe.
Exactly,
maybe something like that.
Yeah, I'd try not to ask too many questions, but no, it's a very secretive. And over in Eastern Europe, Eastern Europe, they've got a massive heritage of wild mushrooms.
Valuable foraging patches and secret locations. We were getting the sense that wild mushrooms are big business. And one of the biggest in the business, in Sweden at least, was set up in 1995 by Ola Hultman. So how many pickers do you employ? I mean, how does the system work?
We buy only from private people like you and me. We have a lot of mushrooms in this district, my county. So when people find more than they can take care of by themselves, they come to me with it. And we have, for the moment, about 500 different pickers engaged.
So in a normal year, roughly how many mushrooms would you pick?
We hope we can reach 150 tons this year.
150 tons. It's a lot of mushrooms. What happens then when they bring the mushrooms back to you?
Important that the picker keeps them cool and not leave the mushrooms in a hot car and stuff like this. And so they deliver it very fresh to us. Then we cool it down. It's possible to store them at our place for a few days, but normally we ship them day after we buy them.
What checks are in place in Sweden to make sure the mushrooms are what you say they are?
Yes, my customer trusts in me. And then, of course, we have a couple of systems when we buy them and handle them. First is when the picker comes in. You know, all mushrooms we receive is with an eye to an eye with the picker. And everything is checked before paid. And then we check it again when we pack it for the customer.
I mean, you have been in the mushroom business and you have been picking mushrooms for a long time. Do you see the mushroom business changing?
Yes, in Sweden I can see it for sure. And that's because the consumers are getting more and more aware and interested in origin and interested in ethics. What sticks out in Sweden really is the fact that we have all up till last year we had contracted pickers. For example, some company in Bangkok contracting people from the street and promised them good money if they buy a ticket to Sweden and pick mushrooms and berries. They have to take loans to pay for the air ticket. And when they come here to not very serious companies, just using them, and when the season is over, they don't pay them fully. So some don't even have money for the ticket home. I can see this is true because every year I'm offered Swedish mushrooms delivered to me about half the price which I pay the pickers. A lot of trading before it reaches me and still so cheap. That means that the pickers got nothing.
Who controls the wild mushroom trade, would you say?
Depends on what you mean with control. You could say I am in some control on prices. I know all wholesalers in Europe keep an eye on my company to see which prices we set, because I don't ask anybody about prices. I set the prices and then take it or leave it. But then I know there are companies in Europe who tries to control. They try to tell me where I can sell and not sell. They can't control me, but I'm sure they can control smaller companies in Europe. But I don't listen very much to other prices on the market because we have a unique quality. How it's linked to pickers is that we motivate pickers with money. We don't press the pickers to pick cheap. We motivate them with money, and we makes it interesting to bring high quality. And it has been a success for us for 30 years, so we are still growing. Quality starts in forests.
Quality starts in the forest. Ulla Hultman, owner of Värmlands Skogsforad, one of Sweden's largest wild mushroom suppliers. The role of the individual forager in what is a globally traded wild food is clearly a big part of the story. And it was this underworld, operating almost outside normal supply chain rules, that was starting to explain why our dried mushrooms were of such variable quality. Paul Carson is the author of Porcini, Born to be Wild, The Foragers, Custodians of Nature, and he's a qualified mushroom controller for Norway's Mushroom Association.
I went around the world. I went to China, Italy, Bulgaria, US to meet and hang out with foragers. And it was a great adventure, really.
Who are these people? You say foraging appeals to people almost on the edges of society.
Nobody really asks about who you are, what you have done. You just go to somebody that buys and say, I picked this, look at it, it's good. So it's you don't need a CV to do anything on the foraging scene. So I met so many people with psychical problems, with different deficiencies, drug addicts, strange people on the edge of everything on any standard. And they enjoy this, and they meet and they discuss, and it's the buying stations. This was especially in Eastern Europe and in the US, where great hangouts. You came in there, you were wet, cold, you got coffee, sometimes you were served some food, and it was a really good social meeting point. And everybody were even to discuss what they found, where they found it, they had their secrets, and it was a really, really nice atmosphere.
That's a very interesting social structure. Now, we've been told that the wild mushroom business is really dominated by China. Did you see that?
Yes, definitely. Until 30, 40 years ago, they were not really aware about how big growth of the porcini they had. It was ignored also there. But then they understood this is a mushroom that is sought after in Europe and US, and okay, let's pick it. And around 75% of all porcini comes from China today on the world market.
So who did you meet in China, and what did you see?
In Kunming, the capital of Yunnan, there is two really big mushroom markets, one fresh market, and I have never seen so much mushroom in all of my life. And in Europe, you have our 10 boletes that we pick, but here it was 40, 50, 60 different boletes. And there were mushrooms I would never have dared to eat. And I was served mushrooms I regarded as poisonous here in Norway, Europe. But you have to go with with your hosts. And then they have a dry mushroom market, a different place. And there were tons of mushrooms. I've never seen so much mushrooms in my life. The Chinese, of course, also love their mushrooms. And the farming of mushrooms is also very big in China. They say that 80% of mushrooms, cultivated mushrooms, comes from China. So they have a grip on mushrooms that they have really taken on the world with.
We looked at several packets and jars of dried porcini and other dried mushrooms with a Swedish mushroom expert. And we have to say that consistently they didn't smell like mushrooms. They were very dark brown and they smelled of marmite. I mean, you're describing a market in China where, mushrooms are celebrated and you saw all these wonderful mushrooms. How did that develop into what we, opened in a jar of mushrooms in the UK?
There's a lot of bad mushrooms on the market, especially dried porcini. And it's sold because of our lack of knowledge about what we are going to taste and how it should look. Of course, the pricing is very different for the top quality, the white, soft, really porcini-smelling dried mushroom to the bad, dark stuff you have seen in those very small packages, maybe just 20 grams, of black crumbled porcini sold to a very high price. So you have to really look for the good stuff, and it's difficult to find. You have to know your mushrooms, really, to find it. It feeds on the lack of knowledge, really.
We hear that in the UK you can dump almost anything because we don't know about mushrooms, that you can sell anything on the UK market. Is that true?
It's definitely true about England. You are really probably the worst mycophobe society in the world. Sorry to say. But in Norway, we are also a bit along the mycophobe road, and it's catching up. But you have to go a bit more east to Finland, to the Baltic states, Poland. There you have the real mycophiles, the mushroom lovers that really know their stuff. And this is you are brought up in the generations to learn the mushrooms. Not a lot, but really maybe 20, 30 mushrooms that you pick and use.
So how well regulated is the wild mushroom business in terms of safety first and quality?
In Norway, for example, the food authorities don't want to have anything to do with wild food. There is no standard for buyers to fill up. They have just to make it sure themselves. So it's not the foragers, but the first buyer that has the plight to say it's safe. There's no quality control before the first buyer sells it further on. And of course, for fresh mushrooms lying in the trunk of a car during a hot day, it's not good. And then the soggy ones, everything is bought and it's maybe frozen down and then goes into industrial production to be porcini flour. Can be dried quite quickly, and the drying gets all the maggots out. There's a lot of ways to prop up your porcini dried. The quality control starts only when it hits the cold chain. Then it's good. But before that, it's really can be really awful.
Paul Carlson, author of The Foragers. In the UK, the quality, safety and authenticity of wild mushrooms coming into the UK are the responsibility of the Food Standards Agency and DEFRA, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. The FSA told us that businesses need to ensure products they sell are safe and what they say they are. They also said that checks on wild mushrooms, where there is a public health concern, take place at the border and include ID verification and physical checks. DEFRA told us that selling wild mushrooms labelled as a specific species, which then contain mixed varieties, as Mauro's study found in his sample bought in the UK, may be in breach of food information regulations. Both the FSA and DEFRA said that any question about a food not being what it says it is should be raised with your local trading standards officer. But in late 2024, the consumer organisation Which investigated trading standard departments in England, Scotland and Wales, and in their report they concluded, "Our research shows that trading standards is no longer fit for purpose. There's much evidence to show that they're understaffed and their budgets have been regularly cut over the last decades. It's hard to imagine them being able to start investigating dried wild mushrooms, a marginal part of most people's diets in the UK. So, buyer beware." How to cook wild mushrooms is another grey area for Brits. If you've learned how to identify the basic safe species and brought them home, or you've managed to find somewhere to buy good quality wild mushrooms, what do you then do with your magical haul? Well, keep it simple, says Liz O'Keefe, cookery writer and co-author of the Mushroom Man cookbook.
It sounds boring, but you've got to go back to basics. Butter and garlic, a little splash of white wine and some fresh herbs, and have it with some crusty bread. People just think it's all about autumn, but there are several mushrooms that come out in spring, there's summer mushrooms, and there are a lot of autumn and winter mushrooms. But then, of course, you've got like dried throughout the year, and we have our cultivated mushrooms that keep on going as well.
Are there simple techniques that you're a fan of?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for example, the recipe I'm working on at the moment, it's a mushroom and chestnut soup, and it's quite a thick, hearty soup. So for that, I've actually used a dry mushroom powder, a porcini powder, and that's really quite potent. The star ingredient is the fresh mushrooms. So on top of the soup, I've got honeyed golden chanterelle mushrooms. So they have just been quite quickly pan-fried in honey, so they get a little bit sticky. With a risotto, I would always put dried porcini or a mixed dried mushrooms, if I had it, into the stock. And then I would very, very finely mince the leftover, like the hydrated mushroom. Fry that quite well, because it can be quite tough and strong, and that way it gets integrated through the whole thing. And then I would add fresh wild mushrooms towards the end.
Back in Deb and Bent's Derbyshire kitchen, Nina and I were ready to eat our own harvest.
Our mushroom forayers made us hungry, or it made me hungry. I can't speak for you.
Shall we do a fry up, a simple fry up with the harvest? So if you fry the bacon and it will release some fat, and we can fry the mushroom in that fat. All right, let's go for it. I will break the mushrooms in quite big chunks here, so you have a chance to distinguish what mushroom you're actually eating. And in this pan we have parasol mushroom, vermilla, field mushroom. Normally you just start without any butter whatsoever, and now you see it releases the water and let the water evaporate a bit. Then I add fat afterwards and seasoning. So now it's kind of dried a bit off. Yeah, I think it's time to add some fat. I don't think we need more than that. Bacon is done.
You just put a little.
We're having soup and
Toasties.
ooh, I love mushroom soup. Oh my God. Oh my goodness me. Well, I don't know, this is pretty special. Wow. Did you saute some onions in it first, or it's just mushrooms?
Onions, yeah. Parsley, flour, I would say, yeah, and a bit of creme fraiche, and a slug of whiskey.
That's thrown in at the end, right?
Yeah, yes.
That's another level mushroom soup. Porcini soup.
This is the most, in my point of view, the most forest floor flavored mushroom. You can nearly feel the soil and the pine needles and the grass, and this just encapsulates what's on the forest floor, this particular mushroom.
Which is?
Winter chanterelle.
Want some toast?
Oh, thank you.